Chapter 4, Breaking Point. By Monday, Novatech's HR department was no longer whispering. They were knocking, formally coldly, on Elena Rivera's office door with carefully folded expressions and clipped words. Miss Rivera, we'd like to schedule a meeting regarding recent media attention. It's procedural, of course. Nothing to worry about, yet. Elena didn't flinch. She sat straighter, nodded politely, and scheduled the meeting. But inside, her stomach curled into knots. She knew how this would go. The article hadn't named her, no photo, no quote, nothing solid. But innuendo was corrosive. Enough suggestion and people filled in the blanks. A woman in Julian Roth's orbit suddenly climbing ranks, earning proximity no one else got? They'd start to wonder. Whispers would spread. Her credibility would erode, not from what she'd done, but from what they thought she'd done. And Julian, he hadn't said a word since the leak, not even a text, not even to ask if she was okay. The HR meeting was as brutal as expected. We're not accusing you of misconduct, said one of the execs, glancing down at a printed copy of the article. But given the company's visibility and Mr. Roth's profile, it would be negligent not to ask the question. What question? Elena asked sharply. Another executive leaned in. Have you ever been involved with Julian Roth in a personal capacity? There it was. Elena paused, every instinct screaming to burn the room to ash. But instead, she gave the same answer Julian had likely built his empire on. No comment. She stormed to the top floor that evening, barely registering the security staff as she passed. The glass doors to Julian's office were closed, but light still burned inside. She didn't knock. He looked up from his desk, startled. Elena, you should have shut it down, she snapped. He stood. I am shutting it down. My legal team's already contacted. No, not the press. HR. The company. Me. You let them come after me like I'm some liability to manage. Julian moved from behind the desk, voice low. I told them not to touch you. I thought they listened. You thought wrong. Silence stretched between them. Her anger wasn't just rage, it was heartbreak wearing armor. She looked up at him and said barely above a whisper, Do you even care? Julian flinched. Elena, He ran a hand through his hair, something about him unraveling. After the leak, I hired someone. She blinked. A lawyer? A private investigator. Her stomach dropped. You what? Not to find you, he said quickly. To protect you. I didn't know who leaked the story or if you were being followed. He swallowed. I thought someone might hurt you or use you. I had to know you were safe. She stared at him, stunned, and then softly, So instead of calling me, you hired someone to spy on me? I didn't want to pull you deeper into this, Julian said. If it looked like we were in contact, it would have made it worse. And now, she asked, breath shaking, what are we, Julian? What am I to you? His jaw flexed. You're everything I shouldn't want. That's not an answer. He stepped closer, his eyes blazing with something vulnerable and furious. I'm in love with you. The words hit like a detonated truth. He didn't reach for her, didn't try to soften it, just stood there, raw and exposed. I'm in love with you, he repeated, quieter now. But I didn't say it because I knew you'd run. Elena stared at him, heart crashing against her ribs. I didn't run, Julian. I stayed. I worked beside you. I fought for you. I waited. I thought I was protecting you, he said again, voice cracking. No, she said. You were protecting yourself. She turned away, shoulders trembling, and then softly, almost like a confession, she added, I would have said it back. Julian looked like the ground had opened beneath him. Elena, but it was too late. She faced him one last time, eyes full of devastation. You hid behind that NDA, behind your fear, and now you want love to survive on silence? He stepped forward, but she held up a hand. Don't. And with that, she walked out. No slammed doors, no tears, just the sound of her heels echoing down the corridor, and a man who realized too late that all the control in the world couldn't keep love from slipping through his hands. By morning, she was gone. No resignation letter, no forwarding email, just a desk emptied of everything except a single folded note. Don't look for me. This isn't revenge. This is self-respect. Julian sat in her chair for a long time, staring out the window at a city that suddenly felt colder. For a man who built machines to predict human behavior, he'd never felt more lost. And for the first time in years, the silence he'd once relied on felt like punishment. Chapter 5. What Love Is Not. Elena Rivera didn't move far, just far enough to disappear. A quiet coastal town 2 hours outside the city, a small loft with uneven wood floors and sea breeze that snuck in through cracked windows. And it was the kind of place people didn't come looking, not unless they knew exactly what they were after. She took on freelance work, small companies, startup teams, nonprofit tech projects that didn't have the budget or bureaucracy of a Novatech. She didn't miss the skyline view or the high-level strategy meetings. What she missed was harder to admit: the silence after midnight, the rhythm of intellectual duels, the way Julian Roth's voice dropped half an octave when he was truly listening. But she tried not to think about him. Most days she succeeded. Julian, however, was failing spectacularly. He didn't spiral publicly. That wasn't his style. No drinks thrown, no tabloids, no reckless press statements. But inside the sterile walls of his penthouse and office, things cracked. He missed meetings, lost focus mid-sentence, snapped at teams for things that never used to bother him. He told the board he was taking a sabbatical for clarity, he said. What he meant was for her, because the silence she left behind was not empty. It was filled with everything he hadn't said. 1 week turned into 2, then 3. And finally, one cold evening, Julian found himself sitting on the edge of his bed, holding the note she'd left behind in his hands like it was sacred text. Don't look for me. This isn't revenge. This is self-respect. But Julian had stopped respecting himself the moment he let her walk away. He folded the note carefully and stood. No driver, no entourage, just a duffel bag, a rental car, and an address traced only through a friend of a friend contact Elena had consulted for. Julian didn't hack her privacy. He didn't push. He simply asked. And when he arrived in the town, he didn't text or call. He walked until he found the old brick building with plants in the window and a cracked intercom that buzzed weakly when pressed. Elena opened the door wearing a sweatshirt and loose jeans, her hair tied in a low knot. No makeup. No mask. For a second, she didn't speak. Then, "Are you lost?" His voice was quieter than she remembered. No, not anymore. She didn't let him in right away. They stood in the hallway, him with hands shoved in his coat pockets, her with crossed arms and guarded eyes. "I didn't come here to fix anything," Julian said. "I know I can't." "Then why are you here?" "To tell you I'm sorry and to stop hiding." She arched an eyebrow. "From me. From myself," he swallowed. "From what I feel." She said nothing. Julian ran a hand down his face. "I built everything in my life to be controllable. My company, my schedule, my public image. You were the one thing I couldn't predict. And I think that scared me more than I knew." "Fear isn't an excuse," Elena said softly. "I know," he said. "I used it as a wall. I thought if I said nothing, did nothing, maybe you'd stay in the safe space I imagined for you. But you deserved better than my silence." He stepped closer, not too close. "I hurt you because I thought love was something to protect people from, but I was wrong. What I feel for you, it's not a liability. It's the first real thing in years." A pause. He added, voice cracking slightly, "I don't want a perfect ending. I just want to earn the right to try again." Elena stared at him, and finally she opened the door. They didn't kiss. Not that night. She made tea. They sat on opposite sides of her worn-out couch and talked. He told her about the PI, about the loneliness after his last betrayal, about the guilt of having everything but knowing none of it meant anything without trust. She told him about her past, too. The ex who used her ambitions against her, the friend who betrayed her to gain a promotion. The way Julian's silence had echoed old wounds she thought were long scarred over. "I wasn't afraid of your power," she said. "I was afraid of how easily you kept me out, and how quickly I fell anyway." Julian looked down at his hands. "I don't want fireworks anymore. I just want real." Elena met his eyes. "Then be consistent. Don't show up when it's dramatic. Show up when it's boring. When I'm tired, when you have nothing to gain." He nodded slowly. "I will." They sat in silence for a while, not awkward, not hesitant, just breathing the same space. When he stood to leave, she walked him to the door. No promises, no cliffhangers. But as he stepped into the hallway, she said softly, "Julian?" He turned. "I'm not saying yes. Not yet." "I know, but I'm not saying no either." A small, fragile smile crossed his face. "That's more than I deserve." "Maybe," she said, "but it's yours anyway." Chapter 6. No Pretending. Their second beginning looked nothing like the first. There were no charity galas, no stolen glances across champagne glasses, No silk sheets in five-star suites. There were mismatched mugs of coffee, morning walks along the beach, emails exchanged over project drafts. Julian sitting cross-legged on Elena's carpet as she explained UX friction metrics with a pencil and notepad. They didn't call it dating at first. They called it trying. Trying to be honest. Trying to build something real without the armor they once clung to. Trying not to mistake passion for permanence or silence for safety. Julian stayed in the town for a while, rented a quiet apartment near the pier. Nothing extravagant, he wanted her to know that he could strip everything else away and still be the same man who wanted her. Sometimes Elena would pass by the window and see him inside. Shirt sleeves rolled, hair a mess, lost in a spreadsheet. Other times he'd bring over Thai food and sit on her balcony in the cold just to hear her talk about her day. What they had was gentle, not timid, not hesitant, intentional. One evening, months after the hallway confrontation that changed everything, Julian handed her something small. It wasn't a ring. It was a folded contract. The NDA, the original one, her copy. Elena raised an eyebrow. You kept it? I did, he said. Not because I wanted to hold it over you, because I wanted to be reminded of what I did wrong. She unfolded the paper. His signature was still there. So was hers. I don't need it anymore, he said, voice low. Burn it. Frame it. Rip it up. It's yours. She stared at it for a moment, then without a word tore it clean down the middle, then again and again, until the pieces fluttered like ash to the floor. No more pretending, she said softly. No more pretending, he echoed. Trust didn't return all at once. It was a gradual thing, a deliberate one. They fought sometimes, not destructively, but honestly. Elena called him out when he retreated into silence, when he tried to handle everything himself. Julian, in turn, reminded her that vulnerability wasn't weakness, that needing someone didn't make her any less self-sufficient. They still lived apart for a while. She liked her space. He respected that. But they carved out a rhythm. He brought her breakfast on Tuesdays. She left annotated sticky notes on his whiteboards with ideas he secretly treasured more than anything else. They took weekend trips, never extravagant, just road trips to places with no cell reception. Somewhere between shared playlists and highway sunsets, they began to write a new story, one that wasn't written in ink or contracts, but in choices. Daily, quiet, human choices. Eventually, Novatech reached out. The board asked Julian to return. He agreed, but on one condition: Elena would consult on a new project as a partner, not an employee. She declined the offer. Not because I don't want to work with you, she told him, smiling, but because I finally love what I do. On my own terms, Julian nodded. That's exactly why I fell for you. One chilly spring night, they sat side by side on a park bench overlooking the water. Julian took her hand. No rush. No expectation. Elena, she looked at him. He swallowed. You were never the woman from the NDA. Not to me. Not really. You were the exception I tried to erase. I won't make that mistake again. She smiled, sad and warm all at once. I didn't fall in love with the CEO, she said. I fell in love with the man who whispered in the dark about the things he was afraid to want. He leaned in, forehead resting gently against hers. So what now? Elena thought for a long moment, then laced her fingers through his. Now, she said, we keep trying, and if we fall again, we fall together. A year later, their photo appeared in a small business magazine, not on the cover, not in Scandal. Just a spotlight on a tech investor and a former consultant turned ethical AI advisor, collaborating on a startup that promised transparency, fairness, and integrity. When asked in the interview how they built such seamless trust in a high-stakes environment, Elena smiled and answered, "We don't pretend about anything. That's where it starts." Julian added, "And where it starts is where it lasts." They weren't perfect, but they were true. And in the end, that's what love turned out to be. The end of the NDA. Elena and Julian's journey was never about perfection. It was about choice, growth, and love that survives the silence. If you felt the tension, the heartbreak, the slow burn chemistry, and the healing that followed, then you're exactly where you need to be. Thank you for reading. Hungry for more emotional, character-driven love stories with depth, drama, and heart? Make sure to subscribe, follow to get the next one delivered straight to you. More unforgettable stories are just around the corner, because love, it's never simple, but it's always worth it.